The universe was quiet, too quiet. For years, Earth had been a peaceful planet, hidden in the far corner of the Milky Way galaxy. People on Earth went about their daily lives, never imagining that danger was coming. The people of Earth had no idea that a storm was brewing far beyond their world. They had no idea that an enemy was watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It all started when the invaders came. No one had seen it coming. Their ships were massive, far larger than anything Earth had ever known. The invaders' technology was years ahead of anything humans had. They arrived without warning, without any kind of message or diplomacy. They didn't want to talk. They didn't want to negotiate. The invaders came to conquer. They believed that Earth was weak, defenseless, and would fall easily to their advanced forces. The first attack came from the skies. The invaders' ships rained down on Earth's largest cities, unleashing devastating firepower. They hit without mercy. Cities like New York, London, and Tokyo were leveled in a matter of minutes. The people had no time to react. They were taken by surprise, and many of them died before they even understood what was happening. The invaders knew that Earth had no space fleet, no strong defenses in the sky, and they thought this would be an easy victory. The invasion was swift and brutal. The skies were filled with the sounds of explosions, screams, and chaos. Buildings crumbled to the ground as the invaders' weapons tore through them. It was as though the Earth was being torn apart at the seams. Panic spread quickly across the world. Governments tried to organize a response, but it was too late. The invaders were too strong. The helpless humans had no way to defend themselves. But what the invaders didn't know was that Earth was not as defenseless as they believed. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in hidden military bases, humanity had been preparing for years. Unknown to the invaders, Earth's scientists, engineers, and military leaders had been working in secret to build a fleet of ships that could defend their world. These ships were not just ordinary crafts. They were made for war. They were faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything Earth had ever seen. For years, the Earth's fleet had been in hiding. The people on Earth knew that their planet was vulnerable, and they feared the day when someone would come to try and take it. That fear pushed humanity to prepare. They built powerful weapons and developed strategies that were meant to protect them if an enemy ever attacked. They knew they had to be ready, but no one knew when the day would come. In the quiet corners of Earth's space command centers, military leaders watched as the enemy attacked. They knew that this was the moment they had been preparing for. They had always known that Earth was vulnerable, but they had also known that one day Earth's enemies would make the mistake of underestimating them, and that day had come. As the invaders rained down destruction on the helpless cities of Earth, the fleet commanders were silent. They watched the chaos unfold on their screens, but they didn't panic. They had been waiting for this moment. They knew what had to be done. And now, the time had come to reveal the Earth fleet to the world. But the fleet commanders also knew that this wasn't going to be easy. The invaders were powerful, and their ships were advanced. They had the advantage, but they didn't have the knowledge of Earth's secret weapons. The fleet was Earth's only chance to survive. On the moon, hidden away in a massive underground base, Earth's fleet was ready. The ships were sleek and powerful, designed to take on the most advanced enemies in the galaxy. Each ship had been built for speed, agility, and firepower. They were Earth's last hope. But the fleet had not yet been activated. The commanders were waiting for the right moment to strike. They knew they had to act fast. If they didn't, Earth's cities would be lost forever. The tension inside the command center was thick. The soldiers and officers exchanged nervous glances, knowing that the fate of the entire planet rested on their shoulders. They were about to face the biggest challenge humanity had ever known. If they failed, Earth would fall. But if they succeeded, they would show the invaders that Earth would not go down without a fight. The fleet commander, a strong and determined leader, stood at the front of the room. He looked at the screens, where images of the devastation were flashing. Earth's cities were burning. People were dying. The time to act was now. With a firm voice, he ordered the activation of the fleet. The soldiers moved quickly, flipping switches and sending signals to the ships hidden on the moon. The engines of the ships roared to life. The Earth fleet was ready. But would it be enough to save the planet? As the ships slowly ascended from the hidden base, the fleet commander's heart pounded in his chest. He knew this was just the beginning. There was still so much to be done. The battle for Earth had only just begun. The invaders had no idea what was coming. The calm before the storm had ended. Now, Earth was ready to fight back with everything it had. The war for Earth's survival was about to begin. Deep within Earth's hidden military bases, away from the prying eyes of the public, a secret force had been preparing for this very moment. For years, Earth's top scientists, engineers, and military leaders had worked together in silence, developing a fleet that was far beyond anything the invaders could have imagined. These were not just regular spacecraft. They were war machines, designed for one purpose only: to protect Earth from any threat that dared to invade. The invaders had arrived, their ships darkening the skies above Earth's cities, and while the people below were in chaos, thinking their world was doomed, the truth was that Earth's defenders had been quietly waiting for this moment. Earth had always been seen as weak, vulnerable, and backward in the eyes of the rest of the galaxy, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. Humanity had a hidden strength, a strength that had been built in secrecy, ready to strike back when the time came. At the heart of the command center, an eerie silence lingered as the fleet commanders prepared for the first major offensive. The once calm faces of the officers were now steely with resolve, their eyes fixed on the giant screen showing live footage of the destruction. The invaders had launched their attack with brutal efficiency, striking without mercy. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the one thing they could never understand: the spirit of humanity. The fleet commander, General Roderick, stood before a table filled with holographic displays and star maps. His fingers hovered over a series of buttons, each representing a fleet ship ready to launch. His face, weathered by years of military command, betrayed no emotion as he prepared to give the order that would change the course of history. "Activate the fleet," he ordered in a voice that was calm, yet filled with authority. The room immediately sprang to life, with officers rushing to their stations, issuing commands and relaying orders to the fleet ships scattered across the moon's hidden base. In a matter of moments, the silent, dormant fleet hidden beneath the surface of the moon began to stir. The massive warships, sleek and imposing, powered up their engines, their lights flickering to life. They had been waiting for this moment in time, the moment when humanity's survival depended on them. These ships had been equipped with the most advanced weaponry Earth could produce: plasma cannons, energy shields, and artificial intelligence systems designed to outthink and outmaneuver any enemy. While the Earth fleet's preparations were underway, the invaders continued their assault on the planet below. The sounds of explosions, gunfire, and screams filled the atmosphere. Earth's cities were falling, and humanity's defenders had no choice but to act quickly or lose everything. The fleet commander looked up at the large screen as the first ships of Earth's fleet soared into space. The gigantic warships ascended through Earth's atmosphere, their engines glowing brightly as they broke free from the planet's gravity. The commander's heart raced, but there was no turning back now. Earth's survival was in their hands. "We must strike before they regroup," General Roderick said, his voice steady. "We'll catch them off guard and show them the full force of Earth's might. Prepare for the first strike." The fleet commander's words echoed through the command center, where every officer and soldier was now fully alert, their eyes glued to the screens. Earth's fleet was out there, racing toward the invaders, and there was no time to waste. The fate of the planet depended on this first move. Meanwhile, high above the Earth, the invaders' ships continued to wreak havoc. The alien forces had begun to celebrate their victory, thinking the planet was already lost. Their leader, a towering figure clad in dark armor, stood at the helm of their flagship, overseeing the destruction below. He had no idea what was coming for him. Back in space, the Earth fleet moved with calculated precision, their ships gliding through the cosmos like shadows in the dark. The fleet had been designed for speed and agility, and it showed. Within moments, the first wave of Earth's ships arrived near the outskirts of the invading force. The invaders had no idea what was about to happen. "Target their command ships first," General Roderick ordered, his eyes narrowing with focus. "They think they've won, but they haven't seen what we've got yet." With those words, Earth's fleet opened fire. Plasma blasts shot out from the ships, striking the invaders' lead ships with deadly force. The aliens had no time to react. Their ships began to break apart under the assault, their defenses unable to withstand the sheer power of Earth's weapons. The invaders' joy quickly turned to panic as their ships fell from the sky. The first wave of Earth's fleet had arrived, and they were not here to negotiate. They were here to win. The invaders scrambled to regroup, but Earth's fleet was already on them. The battle had begun, and Earth was not going down without a fight. On Earth's surface, people looked up in awe as they saw the brilliant streaks of light in the sky. The once defenseless humans were now witnessing the full power of their fleet. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope. The Earth fleet had arrived, and it was fighting back with everything it had. But General Roderick knew this was only the beginning. The invaders were powerful, and Earth's fleet was still outnumbered. The first strike had been successful, but there was much more to come. The battle for Earth's survival was far from over. The Earth fleet was about to show the invaders that no one could just come into their galaxy and take what they wanted, not without facing the consequences. The calm before the storm had ended. The fleet had risen from the shadows, and now the real fight began. Earth's defenders were ready to prove that humanity was not to be underestimated. They would strike back with no mercy. The calm had been shattered. Earth's fleet had moved into position, and with a single command, the battle for the planet's survival was now fully underway. The invaders, still reeling from the first deadly assault, scrambled to organize their defenses, but they were too slow. The Earth fleet, now fully deployed, moved with brutal efficiency, cutting through space like a knife through butter. The invaders' ships, massive and intimidating, had been designed to instill fear, but the humans had learned long ago that size didn't always mean power. The fleet's ships, though smaller, were far more agile and deadly. Earth's fleet was a perfect combination of speed, strength, and cunning. A weapon forged in secrecy and born out of necessity. Now it was ready to show its true strength. General Roderick watched from the command center, his eyes fixed on the tactical screen in front of him. He could see the alien ships in the distance, their hulking forms surrounded by a cloud of debris and sparks. But the invaders were not as invincible as they had believed. Earth's fleet moved with precision, each ship working in unison like a well-oiled machine. "Engage the second wave," General Roderick commanded, his voice unwavering. His hands gripped the edge of the table as the first round of attacks hit the invaders' ships. A series of plasma missiles launched from Earth's ships, streaking through space and slamming into the enemy fleet. The explosions rocked the invader ships, sending them spiraling out of control. For a moment, it seemed like the enemy would break, but they didn't. The invaders fought back. The alien ships retaliated with their own powerful weapons. Beams of energy lanced out, striking Earth's fleet. Some ships took heavy damage, their shields flaring and flickering as they absorbed the blasts. But Earth's ships were built for this. They were designed to take hits and keep fighting. The humans were not afraid. One of the first Earth ships to return fire was the Mistral, a fast and powerful warship known for its devastating plasma cannons. Its captain, Commander Elena, was known for her sharp instincts and her unshakable determination. As the Mistral sped through the fray, she issued orders with cold precision. Her ship weaved in and out of the invaders' fire, its plasma cannons lighting up the dark void of space with each shot. The invaders' shields cracked and splintered under the barrage, But still, they pressed on. The battle in space was chaotic, a violent dance of ships moving in every direction, firing relentlessly. Earth's fleet was holding its ground, but the invaders were far from finished. In the distance, their flagship, a colossal vessel nearly 5 times the size of the largest Earth ship, loomed. It had the firepower to wipe out entire fleets with a single strike. If they could defeat that ship, the rest of the invaders would be easy prey. General Roderick knew that the invaders' flagship had to fall. It was their command center, and destroying it would send a clear message that Earth would not surrender. He turned to his tactical officers, his voice steady but urgent. "Prepare the Titan for an assault on the flagship. We need to break their command structure." The Titan was Earth's most powerful warship, a massive vessel equipped with experimental weaponry. Its crew had been training for this mission for months, and now it was time to unleash the ship's full potential. Meanwhile, Commander Elena aboard the Mistral continued to lead the charge. She knew the Titan was about to make its move, and she needed to create a distraction. She signaled to her crew, and in an instant, the Mistral shot forward, closing the distance between itself and the invaders' flagship. "We'll draw their fire," Elena commanded, her voice calm but fierce. "Focus all weapons on the flagship's weak points. We need to buy the Titan time." With the Mistral leading the way, the Earth fleet launched a full assault on the flagship. Explosions rippled through the darkness of space as Earth's ships unleashed everything they had. The invaders' flagship responded with a barrage of counterfire, but the Earth ships were too fast, too nimble, dodging the incoming blasts and returning fire with deadly accuracy. Elena's ship danced through the firestorm, each strike hitting its mark. The invaders' shields began to flicker under the pressure, and their flagship was starting to show signs of damage. But the invaders were not completely unprepared. From the flagship, smaller ships broke off and began targeting the Mistral. It was a desperate attempt to defend their command center, and it nearly worked. The Mistral took a direct hit, sending it spiraling through space. The ship's engines sputtered, and the lights inside flickered. "Hold on," Elena shouted to her crew as the ship rocked from the blast. "We're not done yet." The crew worked frantically, rerouting power and stabilizing the ship. Elena gritted her teeth as she steered the Mistral back into the fray. "We've got one chance. We take down their flagship now." With renewed determination, the Mistral sped toward the flagship again. As it closed the distance, Elena gave the order to fire all remaining weapons. Plasma cannons and missile barrages streaked out, striking the vulnerable sections of the flagship. This time, the damage was too much for the alien ship to handle. A massive explosion tore through the flagship's outer hull, sending debris flying in all directions. The flagship shuddered, its massive form beginning to break apart under the assault. "Target their engines," General Roderick ordered from the command center, his voice rising in intensity. "We finish this now." As the Mistral and other ships continued to provide cover, the Titan moved in for the final strike. With its powerful weapons aimed directly at the flagship's engine core, the ship fired one last massive blast. The energy from the weapon overloaded the flagship's defenses, and the engine core exploded in a burst of light. The invader flagship was no more. Its destruction sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet, causing confusion and panic. The tide of the battle had turned. With their command center destroyed, the invaders were now leaderless, vulnerable. The Earth fleet didn't hesitate. They pressed forward, knowing that victory was within their grasp. The invaders' resistance was crumbling, and the remaining ships began to retreat. Earth had struck back with everything it had, and it was winning. But even as the invaders fled, General Roderick knew that the battle wasn't over yet. The humans had gained a crucial victory, but there was still more to come. The war was far from finished, but for the first time since the invasion began, Earth had hope, and that hope would carry them through whatever came next. As the wreckage of the invaders' flagship drifted into space, the Earth fleet didn't pause to celebrate. The victory was significant, but it was just one battle in a larger ongoing war. The invaders, though leaderless and reeling from the loss of their command ship, were far from defeated. There was still much more to do, and General Roderick knew that the real fight had only just begun. In the command center, the air was thick with anticipation and tension. Officers and soldiers moved swiftly between stations, inputting commands and gathering intelligence. The battle wasn't over yet. Earth's fleet had dealt a decisive blow, but the invaders' remaining forces were regrouping. The Earth fleet had suffered losses too. Several ships had been severely damaged during the skirmish with the flagship, and some had been completely destroyed. The price of victory had already been high. Status report. General Roderick's voice cut through the room, and the officers quickly began relaying information. The invader fleet has split into smaller factions, one officer reported. They are attempting to reorganize and plan a counteroffensive. Our ships are damaged, but we are ready to strike again. General Roderick nodded grimly, his eyes scanning the live feed of the battle. The enemy was not retreating in fear. They were regrouping, preparing for a second wave of attacks. The general knew that the coming hours would determine the fate of Earth. If they didn't act quickly and decisively, the invaders would recover, and this fragile victory would be lost. "We need to take the fight to them," Roderick said, his voice steady but urgent. "No more waiting. We'll hit their weaker flank and destroy as many of their remaining ships as we can before they can regroup. Assemble all available forces." A series of orders went out to the fleet, and the ships began to maneuver into position. Despite the damage to their ships, the fleet was still formidable, and it would take more than just the invaders' retaliation to stop them. Roderick watched as the ships powered up, preparing for the next phase of the battle. The enemy thought they had the upper hand, but the humans were ready to show them just how resilient they could be. Commander Elena, aboard the Mistral, was already in the thick of things. Her ship had taken heavy damage during the battle with the flagship, but she wasn't going to let that stop her. She had fought too long and too hard to back down now. Her crew, though weary, was just as determined. With their leader in charge, they would fight until the end. "Full speed ahead. We're targeting the invaders' fleet formation," Elena ordered, her voice calm but full of fire. The Mistral surged forward, its damaged engines pushing it to the limit. Elena's crew worked quickly, making the necessary repairs as they went. The ship's weapons were still functional, and that was all that mattered. They would keep fighting. The Earth fleet moved like a swarm of predators, attacking the invaders' weak points and exploiting their disarray. Each ship was a force of its own, but together they moved with the precision of a single entity. The invaders, still scrambling to regroup, were unable to mount an effective defense. The humans knew exactly where to strike. In the heart of the battle, the Titan stood as a symbol of Earth's strength. The massive warship, though damaged, had been repaired and was now leading the charge. Its cannons fired relentlessly, its lasers slicing through enemy ships like a hot knife through butter. Each shot struck with devastating accuracy, tearing apart the invaders' defenses. The Titan was relentless, pushing forward despite its own scars from the previous engagement. It wasn't just a ship, it was a message to the invaders. Earth would not be defeated. Even as Earth's fleet tore through the invaders' formations, there was no sense of overconfidence. General Roderick and his commanders knew that the invaders still had formidable forces left. The enemy was not giving up. They were simply changing tactics. They were luring Earth's fleet into a trap. Far beyond the battlefield, the invaders' true leader, the warlord who had orchestrated the invasion, was watching everything unfold. He stood in his private command chamber, his eyes cold and calculating. He had underestimated the Earthlings before, but now he saw them as a worthy adversary. His fleet had suffered losses, but he was not done. It was time for the next phase of his plan. "Activate the super weapon," the warlord ordered, his voice booming in the silence of his command center. "We will destroy their fleet once and for all." The superweapon was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It was a weapon of mass destruction, capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single blast. The warlord had kept it hidden, waiting for the right moment to use it. He had hoped to save it as a final solution, but the loss of the flagship and the recent setbacks had pushed him to act now. As the order was given, a massive energy field enveloped one of the invaders' largest ships. The superweapon was coming online, and its power was immense. If the Earth fleet couldn't stop it in time, the entire battle could turn in the invaders' favor. The warlord smirked, knowing that the humans would soon be forced to fight against something they couldn't possibly comprehend. Back in the battle, the Earth fleet's commanders had no idea that the invaders were preparing their final weapon. They continued their offensive, pushing the invaders back as they concentrated their fire on the remaining enemy ships, but their victory might be short-lived. "We've got a new problem," Commander Elena said as she looked at the tactical readout. "There's something massive moving into position. It's not showing up on our scanners clearly, but it's big. Very big." General Roderick heard her message and immediately ordered all ships to fall back. Something was coming, and it was dangerous. The battle was about to take a dramatic turn, and the humans would have to face a new challenge that could either save or destroy them. The tension in the air was palpable. As Earth's fleet regrouped and prepared for the unexpected, a sense of dread settled over them. The invaders had one final card to play, and no one knew how much time they had left before it was too late. The tension in the command center was thick as a dense fog, with everyone on edge. The Earth fleet had fought hard and suffered considerable losses, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The sudden appearance of the invaders' superweapon was a grim reminder of how quickly the tide could turn. General Roderick paced in front of the tactical screens, his mind racing. They were facing an enemy who had the power to erase them from existence in an instant, and there was no time to waste. "What's the status on the superweapon?" General Roderick demanded, his voice firm, but betraying a hint of urgency. "Still unclear, sir," one of the officers replied, their voice tinged with uncertainty. "Our scans are being interfered with, but it's definitely growing in strength. The energy signature is unlike anything we've encountered." Roderick's face hardened. They didn't know the exact capabilities of this weapon, but they knew enough to understand the threat it posed. If they didn't act fast, Earth's fleet could be wiped out before they even knew what hit them. "We need to find a way to disable it," Roderick said, turning back to face his team. "This is no longer just a battle, it's a race for survival. Do whatever it takes to get us the intel on that weapon." While the command center scrambled to find answers, the battle in space raged on. The invaders' remaining ships were retreating, but the looming presence of their superweapon cast a shadow over the Earth fleet's success. Commander Elena aboard the Mistral had no intention of retreating, however. Her ship, though battered, was still capable of one last push. Her crew was determined, and Elena would lead them to the very edge of space if it meant stopping the invaders once and for all. "Elena," Roderick's voice crackled through her communicator, "I need you to get close to that superweapon. We need intel, and you're our best shot at getting it." Elena looked out of the viewports of the Mistral, seeing nothing but the vast emptiness of space and the endless twinkling of distant stars. She knew what Roderick was asking. It was a dangerous mission, suicidal, even, but the invaders had already crossed a line, and Elena was willing to risk everything to stop them. "We're on it, General," Elena said, her voice steady but carrying an edge of determination. "Tell the fleet to keep the pressure on them. I'll take care of the superweapon." Her crew worked quickly, redirecting power to the ship's engines and weapons. The Mistral was no longer the sleek, agile vessel it had been when the battle began. It was battered, with cracks along the hull and scorch marks from the battle with the invaders' flagship. But it was still alive, and it still had teeth. Elena knew this was their last chance to turn the tide. The Mistral shot forward, cutting through the remaining invader ships like a predator on the hunt. The superweapon's location was a mystery, hidden behind a cloak of interference, But Alina wasn't looking for a clear path. She was looking for weakness. She knew that every powerful weapon had its flaw. If she could get close enough, she might be able to exploit it. As Alina maneuvered the Mistral toward the coordinates they had gathered, the superweapon slowly came into view. It was a massive construct, a gargantuan vessel wrapped in an energy field that pulsed with an ominous glow. The ship's outer shell shimmered as though it were made of liquid metal, constantly shifting and changing. The sheer size of it made the Earth Fleet's ships seem like tiny ants in comparison. It looked as though it could destroy everything in its path with a single sweep. Alina's pulse quickened as they closed the gap. The invaders' ships, despite their disarray, were still trying to defend their prize, launching defensive fire in an attempt to deter the Mistral. But Alina was focused on the superweapon, determined to reach it before it could unleash its fury. "We'll have to get closer," Alina said, her fingers flying over the control panel. "If we don't get close enough, we can't disable it." Her crew braced themselves as the ship shot through a barrage of enemy fire. The Mistral shook under the impact, but Alina gritted her teeth and pushed the ship harder. They were getting closer. The energy field surrounding the superweapon flickered and pulsed, reacting to the proximity of the Mistral. It was only a matter of time before they would reach the weapon's defenses. "We've got incoming," shouted one of the officers, his voice tight with urgency. "They're locking onto us. Take evasive maneuvers," Alina barked. "We'll get close enough. We have to." The Mistral twisted and turned through space, dodging the incoming blasts, but the invaders were relentless. Their ships closed in, firing at every angle. Alina could feel the ship groaning beneath the strain, but they were nearly there. "Prepare to deploy the EMP," Alina ordered. It was a last-ditch effort, a move that could disable the weapon long enough for the fleet to target it directly. But it was risky. The EMP might not even work against the superweapon's advanced shielding. As the Mistral closed the gap, the energy field around the superweapon surged, and a bright beam of light shot from its core. The beam sliced through space with terrifying speed, heading straight for Earth's fleet. Alina could see it coming in the distance, and her heart skipped a beat. "EMP deployed," one of the officers called out. A massive pulse of energy rippled out from the Mistral, surging toward the superweapon. For a moment, everything went quiet. The beam of light stopped in mid-flight, frozen in time. The Mistral had managed to disrupt the superweapon's firing sequence, but it wasn't enough. The weapon still had power, and it was charging up for another attack. "We've bought ourselves a few more seconds," Alina said, her voice steady despite the danger. "Get ready for another round. We'll hit it again." But as she prepared for the next move, an unexpected twist occurred. The superweapon, seemingly unaffected by their last effort, began to shift. It was changing shape, altering its configuration. It was adapting, learning, and becoming even more dangerous with each passing moment. Alina felt a sinking feeling in her chest. The fight was far from over. They had bought time, but now the real battle for survival had only just begun. The invaders were relentless, and their superweapon was becoming more formidable by the second. The next few minutes would determine whether Earth's fleet would survive or fall to the might of this overwhelming weapon. The moments that followed were filled with an eerie silence, the calm before another storm. The superweapon was no longer just a looming threat. It had become something far more sinister. Alina watched with a mixture of dread and determination as the weapon began to change before her eyes. Its form shifted, with energy crackling and fluctuating across its surface as though it were alive. Whatever this weapon was, it had a mind of its own, evolving with each strike, becoming more difficult to predict. General Roderick's voice crackled through Alina's comm system. "Alina, what's your status? We're running out of time." "I can see it, General. The weapon is adapting. Whatever we throw at it seems to just make it stronger." Alina's voice was tight, but she forced herself to remain calm. The weight of the situation pressed down on her, but there was no turning back now. "I'm going in for another run. We'll have to find another way to disable it." Negative, Roderick replied, his tone firm. We're re-evaluating the fleet's position. It's not just a weapon. It's a trap. We need you to pull back and report to the main fleet. We have another plan. Alina's heart sank. Pulling back wasn't an option, not when they were so close. She knew that if they retreated now, the invaders would have the time they needed to fully activate the superweapon and wipe out Earth's fleet with devastating precision. General, we can't pull back. Not now. I'm not leaving without giving everything we've got, Alina said, her voice laced with determination. She had seen too much, sacrificed too much to turn back now. The Earth fleet's survival depended on this moment. For a brief moment, there was silence on the other end of the comms. Then Roderick's voice came through again, quieter, almost resigned. Do what you must, Alina. But if we lose you, we lose everything. I won't let that happen, she replied, her jaw set. I'll find a way to destroy that weapon, even if it costs me my life. The Mistral surged forward again, defying the orders to pull back. Alina gripped the controls with both hands, eyes scanning the flickering tactical readouts as the energy field around the superweapon continued to grow more erratic. Every instinct in her body screamed that this wasn't just a weapon, it was a message. The invaders were making a statement, but Earth was fighting back, and they wouldn't be crushed so easily. The closer they got to this superweapon, the more intense the interference became. Alina could barely make out the other ships in her fleet as they fought in the chaos of the battle. It was as if the invaders had set a trap, pulling Earth's forces into this war of attrition, slowly whittling them down one piece at a time. Focus, Alina muttered to herself. We can do this. We have to. But there was a gnawing feeling at the back of her mind. The superweapon was unlike anything Earth had ever seen, and its evolution wasn't a random occurrence. It was a deliberate strategy. The invaders were anticipating every move, countering Earth's tactics before they could even be executed. One of Alina's officers called out, pulling her attention back to the present. Commander, their ships are converging on us. They're trying to box us in. The invaders weren't just sitting back and letting the Mistral attack. They were adapting, coordinating in ways that seemed almost instinctual. The humans might have had the advantage in terms of numbers and firepower, but the invaders were masters of unpredictability. They were closing in, forcing Alina into a position she couldn't escape from. We need to move fast, Alina ordered, her voice tight with urgency. We can't let them surround us. With a swift motion, she altered the Mistral's course, pulling the ship into a sharp evasive maneuver that sent it hurtling toward the heart of the energy field surrounding the superweapon. The ship bucked under the pressure, and the crew gritted their teeth, their determination matching that of their commander. Every officer on board knew that this was no longer just a mission. It was their last chance to change the course of the war. The superweapon pulsed again, and this time, the energy flared outward like a shockwave, ripping through space and throwing nearby ships into disarray. The Mistral's shields crackled and strained under the impact, but Alina kept her eyes fixed on her target. I'm going in, she muttered. This is it. The Mistral made its final approach, its engines roaring in defiance as it shot through the chaos. The energy shield surrounding the superweapon flickered, and for a brief moment, Alina saw a gap, a small but critical opening in the weapon's defenses. Her instincts kicked in. Deploying EMP, she called out. The weapon discharged a massive pulse of energy as Alina locked in on her target, but the Mistral was already in motion. The EMP surged outward, cloaking the ship in a field of disruption that scrambled the superweapon's ability to focus its energy. The superweapon's beam faltered, its trajectory changing wildly as the EMP disrupted its charge. But it wasn't enough. The superweapon's adaptive capabilities kicked in, and it began to reconfigure itself once more, this time faster than before. Alina's heart raced as the energy field surged once again, threatening to consume everything in its path. This was a weapon beyond their comprehension, a weapon that could evolve, adapt, and retaliate in ways that no human mind could anticipate. "Commander, we can't keep this up," one of the officers shouted. "The Mistral is taking too much damage. We need to pull back, or we'll be destroyed." But Alina refused to back down. "We can't give up now," she said, eyes narrowing. "We'll break through this. We have to." The ship continued its assault on the superweapon, launching everything it had left. Each shot, each maneuver was desperate, calculated, and relentless. The crew of the Mistral fought as though their lives depended on it, because, in that moment, they did. Earth's future rested in the hands of these few brave souls, and they would either find a way to destroy the superweapon or fall trying. And then, as if the universe had finally decided to grant them a moment of mercy, the superweapon's energy shield flickered one last time. The EMP had weakened it just enough for the next strike to land. The Mistral unleashed a direct hit, and the superweapon's core exploded in a blinding flash of light. For a brief moment, everything stopped. The invader's superweapon had been destroyed, but at what cost? The Mistral's hull was torn apart, its engines barely functional. Alina, bloodied and battered, looked out at the wreckage of the superweapon, her heart heavy with the knowledge that while the battle was far from over, this victory had given Earth a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless. And as Earth's fleet regrouped, ready for the final push, one thing was certain. They were not done yet. The invaders had learned a hard lesson today. Humanity could take a punch, but it could also deliver one. The silence that followed the destruction of the superweapon was deafening, an eerie stillness hanging in the void of space. For a moment, it seemed as if time itself had frozen. Alina sat slumped in her seat, her hands still gripping the control panel, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The Mistral was alive, but just barely. Its systems were in critical condition, its hull torn apart from the brutal assault. Yet, despite the damage, they had succeeded. The superweapon, the invader's ultimate tool of destruction, was no more. For a brief moment, Alina allowed herself to close her eyes. She didn't know how long the silence would last, but she could feel the weight of the battle lifting off her shoulders, just slightly. They had won, but the war was far from over. "Commander," one of her officers said, pulling her back to reality. "We've lost contact with the other fleets. They're scattered. The invaders are retreating, but they're not finished. We need to reestablish communications and regroup. Fast." Alina blinked and took a deep breath, shaking the fatigue from her mind. The battle was still raging, even if it wasn't right outside their ship. The invaders were retreating, but they weren't defeated. Not yet. They had pushed Earth to the brink, but now the tables had turned. "Set a course for the nearest fleet," Alina ordered, her voice calm but resolute. "We need to regroup. If they're retreating, this is our chance to strike back while they're vulnerable." The Mistral slowly shifted course, the engines whining under the strain, but the ship moved forward nonetheless. The crew worked tirelessly, patching up systems and recalibrating weapons, all while the space around them began to come back to life. The invaders' ships were regrouping, but their forces were scattered, disoriented by the loss of the superweapon. A transmission came through, crackling with static. General Roderick's voice cut through the noise, rough and strained. "Alina, you did it. The superweapon is gone. We're seeing a significant shift in the battle. We're pushing back." "Understood, General," Alina replied. Her heart skipped a beat at the words, but she knew better than to let herself feel hope just yet. "But we're not out of the woods. The invaders won't give up that easily. We need to stay focused." "Agreed," Roderick responded. "We're coordinating with the remaining fleet units. Prepare for a final push. If we hit them hard enough, we can end this war, once and for all." Alina nodded, though Roderick couldn't see her. A final push. It was the only way to guarantee a victory now. The invaders were battered, their advanced weaponry crippled, but they still had the will to fight. This would be the decisive moment. Either humanity would drive them back forever, or the invaders would regroup, learn from their mistakes, and return stronger than ever. Elena turned back to her crew, who were busy at work, repairing the ship and preparing for the upcoming battle. Their faces were filled with determination, but there was no mistaking the exhaustion in their eyes. They had been through hell and back, but they were still standing. And that, Elena knew, was the strength of humanity. "Status on communications?" she asked, stepping away from the command chair. "We're starting to re-establish contact with the other fleets, Commander," came the reply from one of her officers. "It's patchy, but we've got a few ships already in position. They're ready to join the attack." "Good. Keep me updated." Elena walked back to her seat, her mind already running through the next steps. The invaders were retreating, but they weren't fleeing. They were regrouping, likely to strike again, stronger and more organized. But if humanity acted quickly, they could break the invaders' resolve and end the war for good. The Mistral sped toward the closest fleet, its remaining power reserves almost drained. The ship had taken a beating, and so had its crew. But Elena couldn't afford to let fatigue cloud her judgment. The final assault would require every ounce of strength, every last bit of determination. As they neared the fleet, Elena saw the familiar silhouettes of Earth's ships, though they too had suffered greatly. Some were burning, their hulls cracked open and leaking air. Others drifted in space, their weapons disarmed, their crews long gone. The war had taken its toll, but there was still a spark of life in the fleet, and Elena could feel the hope rising in her chest. "Commander," one of the officers said, "we're seeing a large concentration of enemy ships forming a defensive line ahead. They're not retreating. They're regrouping for one final stand." Elena took a deep breath. This was it, the final confrontation. Earth's fleet, battered and bruised, against the invaders, who had just lost their greatest weapon, but were still a formidable force. "Ready all weapons," Elena ordered. "We won't let them regroup. This ends today." The Mistral's weapons powered up, its cannons humming with energy. The other ships in the fleet began to follow suit, slowly coming into formation. Elena could hear the steady rhythm of her crew, working as one, unified in purpose. They had fought for so long, and now, at the precipice of victory, they were ready to give everything for the final push. The enemy ships began to form up, a line of defense that stretched across the battlefield. Their shields flickered, and their weapons charged, ready to fire. But this time, Earth had the upper hand. The superweapon was gone, and with it, the invaders' greatest advantage. They were cornered, and they knew it. Elena's heart raced as she watched the two forces converge, the tension thick in the air. She could hear the sounds of battle all around her, distant explosions, the whine of enemy weapons, and the steady hum of her own ship's engines. This was it, the final battle. There would be no more chances, no more second chances. "All units," Elena's voice rang out. "This is for Earth. This is for every person who's fought and died to get us here. We finish this now." The fleet surged forward, weapons blazing as they cut through the invaders' line of defense. Elena's grip tightened on the controls as the Mistral joined the charge, unleashing a barrage of fire at the nearest enemy vessel. The battle was chaotic, a blur of weapons fire and explosions, but there was no fear in Elena's heart. This was their moment. This was their time. The invaders fought back fiercely, but they were no longer the unstoppable force they had been. Every move they made, every tactic they tried, was countered by Earth's resilience, by the will of humanity to survive, to protect their home, their families, their future. Elena could feel the weight of their determination in her bones. The battle raged on, but Earth's fleet was winning. One by one, the invader ships fell. Their defenses were weakening, their morale shattering, and when the last enemy ship fell, the space around them grew still. The invaders had been defeated. The war was over. Elena leaned back in her seat, exhausted but victorious. She had given everything for this moment. The price had been high, but Earth had triumphed. The invaders had underestimated humanity's strength, and now they would learn that Earth would never be conquered. "We did it," one of her officers said, their voice quiet with awe. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the viewports. The battle was over, but the journey was just beginning. Earth had won, but there would always be more to fight for. And humanity would be ready.